Hey folks, how you doing? So I've been on eBay again, and I've got a little pile of these things now. These cheap, sold as faulty Sinclair Spectrums. Yeah, this one, it's a boxed example, and when I say boxed, I mean, Christ, it's like, it's not great. But yeah, I suppose technically it is boxed. Like I said, sold to me as faulty. I don't know what the fault is. I think they said they have tried to use it and they couldn't get it to work. They might have said they composite modded it as well. I can't remember. We'll have to check that out. But there is a computer in here. So I've got like 3/4 of a box and half the polys. That's fine. And the unit itself and nothing else. And it, on first inspection, it looks, cosmetically at least, it looks really tidy. So it's there's no bends in the faceplate. There's barely any scuffs in it. Everything looks to be intact. Feet are all missing. That's okay. So yeah, I thought we'd dig into this. We'd have a look and identify what the fault is, maybe see if we can fix it. You never know. Yeah, I thought it might be an interesting little project. Let's have a little look inside, because before I go any further, I just want to check for a composite mod, because I don't know if it's this one or another one that I've bought where they said they'd done that. But before I spend half an hour trying to tune in a picture on it and find out I can't, I'll save myself a bit of time and just have a quick look. Okay, I don't want to disturb the keyboard membrane yet if I can avoid it, but we have an issue 3B. And yes, if you can see that, if I can just zoom in a bit actually. And if the camera will focus, yeah, we've got a capacitor there, so it's had the composite mod. Not the neatest job, but then I'm hardly one to talk, am I? So, hey. Okie dokie. Right. Now, I'm assuming that because it was sold to me as faulty, that the seller has already plugged it in to test it. So I'm just going to do the same because I want to see what the fault is. Now, normally you wouldn't want to do that with a Spectrum. You would want to do some tests first, because if there's a fault on the power lines, for example, so the lower RAM, the 4116 chips, if they're not getting the correct voltages, you can do damage. So that's why you want to do some pre-flight checks on these first. Make sure TR4, TR5 transistors are all working correctly. Things like that. Make sure there's no dead shorts on the power line, because you can damage those chips. If the seller's already plugged it in, well, it's probably a bit late for that anyway. So I think I just want to have a look and see what the fault is. So I think I'm just going to go for it. So let me get set up. I mean, if it doesn't work anyway, what more damage can I do? Maybe that's a naive way to look at it. I don't know. Let's plug it in. Let's see what we get. Reach over for the plug and... well, that's interesting. So I've got a white border, so I'm presuming that means that the CPU is running and that it's talking to the ROM. I think that's what it means. And I've got a flashing cursor on the bottom left hand side, and it made a bleepy noise when it powered on. It could be worse. That to me would seem to indicate some sort of lower memory fault, maybe lower RAM, that it's not actually being able to boot into BASIC, or it could be a fault with the ROM as well. I would put my money on lower RAM if I had to guess. Yeah, okay. That's not terrible, I suppose. But this thing, ages ago now, and I've not actually used it yet. I've been looking for an excuse to, and it's one of these Spectrum diagnostic cartridges. I'm not exactly sure how to use it. The instructions are a little bit vague, but I'm sure I can figure it out as I go. But I'm going to give it a go anyway and see if it identifies a fault. So I think it just plugs into the expansion, he says. And let's put some power to it again. Let's see what we get. Oh, got a blue border this time. That's fine. And, oh, that's cycling through. Let's see. I'm assuming that's testing the lower RAM. I think that's what it's doing. It's just cycling through. So let's just see what it comes back with. Okay, so it seems to have paused on 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that's indicating a lower RAM fault on the 4th chip. I think that's what that means. So that's as good a place to start as anywhere, I suppose. We could have a look at that. Okay, let's do a couple of things. Let's check the voltages going to the lower RAM chips and make sure that they're okay, because if they're not, then that can cause further damage to other chips. And if that checks out, then we'll proceed to changing chip number 4, I suppose. I think I've got some line about. I think the membrane's going to have to be disconnected now. I'll just be gentle because you never know, it might be okay. Let's just be as careful as we can. There we go. Right. I said I wanted to put power to it, and I want to just check the voltages, so let me just get set up with my multimeter. You know, there's kind of no point just changing a faulty chip if they're not getting the right voltages, because it'll just end up causing damage to the new chip as well. So, with these 4116 chips, they work on 3 voltages, so you got 5, -5, and 12 volts, I believe. And if any of those aren't correct, then it can cause problems. Make sure I'm in focus, I'm really not sure. God, this is a Mickey Mouse channel. Right, let me just plug it back in again. Okay. There's the beep again. So, let me just get some glasses so that it shorts something out, because my eyesight is terrible, because I'm an old man now. And hopefully my head isn't blocking the shot. "12-volt line's good. "5-volt line's good. Can I get on the -5 without shorting something out and doing more damage? -4.8. It's a little bit low, but it's probably okay. It's a little bit low. That could be due to the faulty chip. Okay. Alright then. Let me just unplug it again. So, if I'm reading the diagnostic cartridge correctly, and that's a big if, it would seem to indicate that lower RAM chip number 4 is faulty, and I think, let me just zoom in again. I think the way that works is it counts this way. And I believe it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So I don't know whether it means chip number 4 as in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm really not sure. But I suspect it's physical chip number 4 because the way the diodes are actually labelled 1 to 8. So, do you know what? If I get the wrong chip, I can always pull the one next to it and desolder that as well. So I think I'm going to pull this chip here. If it'll focus, I'm sorry, it's such a Mickey Mouse channel, this. Yeah, let me try that again. I'm going to pull this chip here. Failing that, I'll pull this chip here. And we'll see if we get any changes. Try replacing those. So I will break out the desoldering equipment. And let's get that buzzed out. So I'm going to desolder this chip, and I've got to wonder why the manufacturers do this. They've bent all the chip legs over and soldered them flat to the board. That is not helpful. That is going to make desoldering this an absolute pig. But, well, it is what it is. There's no point whinging about it, although I do enjoy a good whinge. I'm just going to desolder it. I'll bring you back when that's done. It's out. It wasn't as bad a job as I thought. Because of the bent pins underneath, it did attempt to pull a veer out as it came. I was going so slowly with the chip, I did manage to spot it, and I was able to straighten the leg up and make sure the hole was clear before I pulled the chip right out, and I have saved the veer. It was, had I got in a little bit hard and wasn't paying attention, then that definitely would have ripped out and I would have been repairing a trace at this point, but thankfully I've been able to save it. That's just a warning with these boards though, they are incredibly fragile. They're not the highest quality, and it is very, very easy to pull a veer out and destroy a trace, so just bear that in mind when you're desoldering. I mean, that goes for anything that you're desoldering, but particularly these boards, they are so fragile. Anyway, chip is out, so let's take a look at that. So I've got one of these things. It's a little RAM tester that I got online, and it'll test your 4116 and your 4164 chips. So let's put it in, let's see what it comes up with. So 4116, make sure I get it the right way around. I have. That in, test, and oh yeah, immediately that's gone to fail. So we know that chip is dead, most definitely. So that's a fault. I can't say that that's the only fault with the board, but definitely we've pulled out a rotten chip there. So I've got a pile of... I've got some new 4116 chips, but I've also got some reclaimed ones as well. And I think I'm going to use the reclaimed ones before I use the new ones and just recycle them a bit. I can't remember what these came out of actually. It might have been another Spectrum, but I don't think so. Where did that come from? So this is another chip. I just want to... Before we put it in, I might as well test it. Let's having a think about it. Having a long think about it. And pass. Okay, so I don't know if this tester is 100%, but I would suspect that that chip's okay. So we'll go with that. So what I'll do is I'll put a socket in. We'll put this replacement chip in, and then we'll see if we get any change in the behaviour on the board. Right, new chip's in, so let's see if that changes the behaviour at all. Ah yes, the camera that will not focus. There we go. Sorry for the Mickey Mouse channel, guys. Yeah, hang on, if I plug it in it might work, might focus. Plug it in. The same. The exact same issue. Okay, so we may have more than one dead RAM chip. Okay, fine. Let's plug the diagnostic cart back in again and let's see if we get a different reading. Yeah, well, it seems to be indicating the exact same chip again. So either I miscounted, or that new chip's just failed because of another issue with the board. I'm going to pull that chip back out. I'll put it back in the test and make sure it's still good. If it isn't, then we know we've got another problem, and it could be that -5 volts line. Excuse me. Yeah, it could be that -5 volts line that's a bit low. In which case, I'll have to check the transistors, and I'll probably recap it at this point actually. Yeah, I think before I go any further, I think the safest thing to do is just replace all these capacitors, because if one of them's failed and it's causing that -5 volts to drop slightly, I could be doing more damage to other chips if the damage hasn't already been done. I don't know. It could be that I've replaced a different RAM chip to what that diagnostic cart was suggesting as well. I'm not entirely sure I'm using it correctly, but I know for a fact that the chip I pulled out was definitely dead. In my experience with these lower RAM chips, once one dies, they all seem to go as well. And that tends to be voltage related issues that cause that as well. But I'm hoping that's not the case, but it may be that I need to pull them all. But before I do that, I want to eliminate any root cause of the failure, so the caps are going to have to go. So I think that's going to be my next job. So let's get this heat sink out the way. Graceful as ever. There's probably a couple hiding behind there. Nope. Oh well. Yeah. Okay. I think I've got all the caps I need. Should have. We'll see. Anyway, I'll change the capacitors. I'm not going to bother filming that. I just want to get it done. I'll bring you back when it's done. Right, caps are all changed, and I did run the diagnostic again, and I am getting exactly the same result. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this chip right there, because I might be reading the diagnostic card wrong. I probably am. Yeah, that -5 volts line is still a little bit low as well. It's coming in at about 4.8. So there could be a short on one of the RAM chips, which is pulling the voltage down. I don't know. But yeah, I think we just continue with the RAM chips and we see where we get. And it may be that they've all failed. It wouldn't surprise me. That tends to be how it goes. Hopefully not, because I don't want to replace them all. But if I have to, I suppose. Anyway, I'll pull the next chip out and we'll take a look at it. Right, so that one's out as well. That was a bit of a fiddle. I had to use some hot air to get that one to move. But it's out. It's in one piece. And I did run it through the tester. And, well, it was interesting, actually, because the lever fell off. So the latch mechanism wasn't working correctly. But when I put it back, the chip tested fine. It was working fine. Which made me wonder about the other one. Because I thought, if my my test equipment wasn't working properly, did that affect the test of the first chip? So I put the first chip back in. And now that's testing correctly as well. So both the RAM chips so far are testing okay. Which isn't necessarily a good thing. I was kind of hoping to find an issue. So I'm not sure where to go with this next. I think what I'm going to do, because I still think I've got a RAM fault. I'm going to check, because I've still got that low voltage on the -5, that I've either got a RAM fault, which is pulling the voltage low because maybe it's got a bit of a short circuit in it, or it could be something wrong with the voltage circuitry itself. So what I'll do is I'll also pull TR4, TR5 transistors and I'll test those as well, make sure they're okay. I'll pull all the RAM chips and I'll test them all. I suspect, I really do suspect that one of them, at least one of them, is faulty. If they come back okay, then we're looking at the ULA, I suppose, and possibly the ROM. I suspect the CPU is fine, but who knows. So that's my next job. Right, I'm going to pull all the RAM chips, I'll test them, and I'll bring you back when I've done that. Right, current state of play. I've taken out all the RAM chips and I've tested them, and they've all come back as fine. They're all showing working. How much stock I put into that tester, I'm not sure, but yeah, what I've done is while all the lower RAM's out, I've powered it, and what I would expect to see is, yes, something similar to that, I suppose, but I would expect to see a white border, and I'm not getting a white border, which would indicate that maybe the CPU and the ROM aren't talking to each other. So I could have a problem there. So I do have a spare, in fact I've got a brand new CPU I can put in it. And I have a ROM off a donor board. So I could try swapping that out maybe. But yeah, maybe the RAM wasn't the problem, not sure. So what I'll do next, I think I'm going to swap the ROM out. I think that'll be my next one for one that I think does work. And we'll see if we get any change. And that's what I'm getting with a new ROM, so I guess I'm pulling the CPU then. Okay. Right, just before I take the CPU out, I thought I'd try something else. And I've swapped the ULA for a known good one. And I've got my white border. So I'm wondering if it was the ULA all along. I think what I'll do at this point is I'll refit the lower RAM. And we'll just see what we get. You never know, this might have cracked it. God! Right, so what am I up to now? I did swap out the ULA because And I thought I got that white border when I powered it up, and I thought, oh, that's solved the problem. Oh no, that was a complete fluke, because the next time I powered it up, that went away. So I've then replaced the CPU, and I got the white border every single time. So I do think there was something wrong with the CPU. And I thought, oh, I've probably cracked it. So I've gone ahead, I've socketed all the lower RAM, and I've refitted all of that. So I've powered it up again, and yeah, I'm going nowhere fast, I think. So I'm going to try something that's maybe a little bit unorthodox, but sometimes I've had good results by doing this. So let me give it a go. What the f*** is wrong with you, you thing? Why don't you just work? Alright, did that make any difference? Nope. Okay, okay, let me have a bit of a think, and I'll come back to you. Well, it's been a few seconds for you, but it's been a day or so for me. I had to step away from this for a bit and go and deal with something else. But I'm back, and I've been reading up on this, and I've got a new plan of attack. So when I plug the diagnostic cartridge in, it's still telling me that chip number 4 is dead. But of course I've tested it. Initially it came up as an error, but that was because my equipment wasn't working properly, but never mind. Anyway, as far as I can tell, all the lower RAM chips are working correctly. So there is a situation where the upper RAM could be faulty, and it could be putting a high or low on the same data line. So it is possible that even though it's showing an error for the lower RAM, it could be the higher RAM that's actually causing the issue. So I think that's going to be my next plan of attack. What I'll do is I'll pull chip number 4, which I think is tied to the same data line, I think, and we'll see if we get any difference. If not, I'll pull all the RAM chips, I'll pull the associated glue logic as well, and then assuming everything else works, it should run at least as a 16K spectrum, and then we can fault find from there. But yeah, I'm going to pull this chip. I'll bring you back when it's done. Okay, chip's out, and ta-da! Yes! Finally, I've got to the copyright screen, so it's booted. So it was the upper RAM chip that failed. Oh, thank God for that. I mean, it's only running as a 16K machine at the moment, so I'm going to need to replace that RAM chip, but that's okay. I've got spares. What I'll do... Oh, thank God for that. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll get the new RAM chip installed. I might replace the original ROM, CPU and ULA as well, because it's possible that those chips are absolutely fine. Plus, I want the ULA. I've actually borrowed the ULA out of another project, and I'd really like it back in that project. So yeah, let me try that. Okay, I've replaced all the original chips again. Obviously, that one's not original, but the rest of them are. And that CPU that I was convinced was dead is absolutely fine, so I was completely misdiagnosing what I was seeing on the screen. Hey ho, you live and you learn. The original ROM's back in, the original ULA, which is good because the one that I replaced it with was a borrowed one anyway. All the original lower RAM, because I was careful and I desoldered it carefully, I was able to reuse these chips. Had I just chopped them out, then I'd be replacing that as well, but no. So, I mean, if you're going to take any lessons away from this, first of all, probably don't use me as any sort of tutorial, because I'm just not, because I'm kind of learning this stuff as I go along myself. But secondly, if you are going to desolder a chip, do it carefully, because there might be nothing wrong with it, and you get to reuse it then, rather than just going ahead and chopping it. But then again, I suppose the flip side of that is if you're not completely happy with your desoldering, and you think you're going to do more damage to the board, then yeah, cut them out. But whatever. Anyway, yes. It's up and working. It's got new capacitors. I've even put in a switching voltage regulator as well, so I've got rid of the heat sinks. So let's get it back into the case, and we'll see if that keyboard membrane's any good, which it probably isn't, but we'll see. See if the keyboard works now, I suppose. Keyboard membrane's junk. I've tried it, I'm getting no response from it. I'm 99.9% sure that the only fault is the keyboard membrane, there's nothing else going on. So I've ordered one, but I won't get that for a few days. I'm not going to bother filming fitting that because, well, it's just a keyboard membrane, and I've done it before on my channel, and lots of other people have got videos on it as well, so there's probably no point. The computer's working fine. I've got it plugged into my SD card reader, and it's not going to stop me from playing Arabian Nights anyway, because I can play that with the joystick. So yeah, it seems to be working fine. And once the keyboard membrane arrives in a couple of days, I'll get that fitted. It'll be 100% repaired. But yeah, we're done. I wouldn't say that was fun, but it was certainly satisfying. So it was one upper RAM chip in the end. I went the long way round. I'm sure somebody who knows what they're doing a little bit better than me would have got to the solution a damn sight quicker, but hey, I'm learning. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for your time as always. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a good whatever it is you're up to, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Bye.